you're wondering what other things you can do with magic or what your dungeon master can allow for magic. You've been through all the rings of all the different spellcasters, and you've seen every spell, and you're looking for a little more flavor. Like, what do we do?
Let's make magic magical, right?
Oh, yeah. Make magic magic again.
Yes. Welcome back to a brand new episode of Basic Liches. My name is Wolf.
I'm Kamo.
Today, we're talking about a very important topic. Magic.
Magic.
Spells, slinging magic missiles, putting people to sleep. Doing all
Setting them on fire.
Fire! Doing all sorts of fun, crazy, imaginative things, right? Casting spells should feel like
Special.
Should feel special. It should feel like you're doing something powerful and amazing. And sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes...
Either you're brand new at it and the spells just seem like they're kind of boring, or you've done it for a while and they start to become monotonous. And
yeah.
what's exciting about it?
Or maybe you've played other fantasy role-playing games and the magic systems in those are a little bit more chaotic, a little bit more magic feeling. They're not so
volatile.
Yeah, magic should feel, it should have a little bit of danger to it, right? It doesn't feel that way in 5e, which is okay. But I think today we're going to talk about how maybe as a DM and a player, you can definitely make magic feel more significant and be a little less vanilla in your 5e games. As a player, what is the easiest, quickest way to add a bunch of flavor and personalize and maybe make your spells more exciting to you while you cast them?
As a player, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Probably the easiest thing, and make sure you talk with your DM about it, but it's just like changing the color of your spells. Change the aesthetic. And
so how it manifests.
How it manifests.
Yes.
Yes. Change how it manifests. And like if you like to cast fire, you throw fireballs out. Make it blue fire. Like every time you do it, it's blue fire. That's the simplest first step to flavoring your spells. And it doesn't do any harm to the mechanics, doesn't do any harm to the game, and makes you feel more in tune with the character you're playing, a little more special. Yeah,
it's great advice. It can be as simple as changing a color, or you can literally retailer the details and manifestations of all your spells. So Kamo and I are both wizards, and we both have magic missile. My magic missile looks and sounds completely different than Kamo's. I shoot like neon tiny baby chickens that like fly and attack people, and yours might be like...
I think it was before the Artificer class even came out. I wanted to make like this tinkering goblin character, but used wizard as a class. And just all the spells I had were different little mechanical things I had created. So for that, it was like little toy airplanes or something. There were little darts that I had made.
Yeah, that was so much fun when you did that. And that was definitely pre-Artificer.
Yeah.
But like I feel like your fireball was like a rudimentary grenade or something. And your dungeon master should be okay with this. I actually think it's in one of like maybe Tasha's Cauldron to Poopy Pants or whatever that is.
Hideous Poopy Pants.
Yeah, it's in there. They tell you to flavor your spells, so it's like an official thing now. But definitely flavor your spells. I think that's like the easiest thing you can do.
Yeah, like for the Wildfire Druid I played, Flaming Sphere is just a spell that I cannot stop casting. Absolutely love it. And like you can imagine as like this floating fire orb that you move around the battlefield, right? But my character was this druid, and I'm a Wildfire Druid, and I wanted to kind of have these themes of like dry grass that are burning up, or kind of like the biome that I was from was more of an arid climate, right? So I was like, well, my flaming sphere is a tumbleweed. Is a flaming tumbleweed, and it just like I can control it. I can make it roll and bounce around. Same effect for the spell, and just thematic. It fits my character, and I could just like dismiss it when it's gone, and the tumbleweed just poofs into smoke.
That's so cool. And and if you don't like the way that you've flavored your spell, you can always change it real quick.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing mechanical about this, and it makes Magic just that much cooler in 5e. Which, if we're being honest, like if I'm being honest, I think Magic is like one of the weakest parts of 5th edition. I think that it doesn't feel magical. It feels like you're just popping off abilities. There's very little. There are creative spells that let you do really interesting things, but most spells, rules as written, I find are just very like, oh hey, I'm just gonna do this and it's gonna work perfectly.
Yeah,
all the time.
So Wolf, I got a question for you involving spells.
All right.
What happens when a player casts a spell in an unintended way? Kind of like, what are the parameters of you allowing them to do what they want to do? And maybe it doesn't say it in the rules, but they want to do it in a different. They want a different outcome. What would you do in those instances?
I would probably allow it. I always want to lean into creativity. I think if your players are bringing something to the table that's interesting, and that is outside of just like I swing my sword, I cast my firebolt, I do this in combat, or if it's a creative plan to do something, yes, I will almost always lean into allowing it, even if it is not rules as written. I will definitely bend, maybe break those things sometimes, but I think I want there to be a cost per se.
Yeah.
I don't want it to just be like you can just go like buck wild and just change stuff. I might ask you for a specific type of skill check.
That's always leaning into the Dungeon Master player, kind of like the Dungeon Master is saying, yes, but.
Exactly.
Rather, yes, you can, but that's going to require you to either take time or use a spell level to cast, or some kind of cost.
Yeah, exactly. You want to balance it in a way that you feel that the character is expending resources, so that there's still as a DM, you're constantly just like, oh, we got to chip away at what they're working with.
So, like an example, what kind of thing would you allow? So say I'm an evocation wizard,
Okay.
Fire blasting, and our sailboat is stuck in ice. It's frozen to the shore, to like an icebergy shore.
Yep.
We can't free it, but I come up with the idea of like, okay, I want to cast like flaming hands to melt the ice around the boat.
Yeah, I would allow that. I think flaming hands is like a cone thing, right?
It is, yeah.
Even if it was scorching ray, and that specifically like asks you to like do like a creature or a target, I would probably be like, sure. Because the evocation wizards can sculpt their spells. They can sculpt
their spells. So that's the type of thing where I'd just be like, yeah, like that's something you can do.
Yep.
Whereas like maybe another wizard wanted to try it and it'll be like, or like have them do rolls. It's like, oh, you're going to need, you need some mental focus. So wisdom, some kind of like wisdom save or check.
Yep.
Right.
There's something there that there's a potential for it to go wrong. Whereas the evocation that's built into their class, yeah, they know to just cast that a little far away from the boat, so you don't turn it into a bonfire. But yeah, I would definitely allow that.
The last bonfire.
Campaign ends right there. So I'm going to come up with a few different spells here, a couple different scenarios, and I'm going to ask you as the Dungeon Master if you would actually allow these things to be used in these ways.
Okay.
Let's say you have the spell Gust of Wind.
Yeah.
Which it's a fairly innocuous
it's like a
little
60
spell.
foot 60 foot by 10 foot blast radius in a straight line that you can move. You can change the angle with a bonus action.
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
That is the one. So let's say there is a monster that is near a wall. And I believe Gust of Wind pushes creatures X amount of feet, right?
Yeah.
Would you allow someone to crush somebody up against a wall using Gust of Wind.
See, I think thematically it's fun if the player like came up with it. It's always if the player comes up with it.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, he's like right up against the wall. Could I blast him back so that he gets smacked up against the wall and bumps his head or something, right? So I would say definitely yes. If the enemy, when he's making his, because what happens is the enemy makes his strength save at the beginning of his turn when he's in the area of effect.
Yep.
If he does really badly, I'll set a number in my head, okay, well, below a 10, right? And he's close enough to the wall. If he gets thrown into the wall and he's more than 5 feet in, to the wall,
Yep.
then I'll say, yeah, he bumps his head, takes a D6, whatever.
Concusses himself.
Yeah, it's just fun. And it's not something that you can abuse if you're like giving all these conditions. It's like, okay, he fails so miserably. It's up against the wall. No one's going to abuse it. It's just thematic and it's fun.
I would do the same thing. And if they rolled a 1, I'd be like, oh, yeah, he bumps his head, D6 damage, and, he's stunned.
Yeah.
He knocked himself out against the wall.
Yeah, that's not something that's in the rules. And that's an example of DM's discretion just to flavor things and spice up combat, creating the image in a player's minds of this thing actually doing something, doing different things.
Yeah. Back to Gust of Wind. I personally love this spell. I think it's very versatile.
Yeah, it's so crazy how it is, and there's so many unexplained things inside it.
Let's say you're the wizard and your party is being chased down a corridor. Something really big is coming after you guys.
Yeah.
And the whole party is running in the opposite direction. Gust of Wind, if you cast that on people, would you maybe speed up their movement?
Yes.
All right.
It definitely, especially if like the wizard had a high initiative and went first in the turn order and just went like turned around and Gust of Wind to the rest of the party. And anyone starting their turn inside wouldn't even make the strength check for them because a lot of the times you can like just accept a save. So I would give them the choice to automatically fail if they wanted to and just take the extra movement. So they get pushed 15 feet and then they can use their movement to run. I think it's a perfect use of it. He's probably not going to keep maintaining the spells, but he could. Yeah. He could be in the back of the group and anyone who falls behind, he could just scoot forward, kind of make this wind tunnel of escape.
And that's the danger, fun. Right? Is he's sacrificing
now
himself.
He's in the back.
He's in the back where the wizard doesn't ever want to be.
No.
But he's casting that wind.
And anytime he gets smacked, it's another saving check to see if the concentrating spell is broken. So it's not a completely unfeasible thing to let your wizard do, and it's really fun.
Here's the weird thing is you try to think of realism when you're using magic. I know that's like kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, because we're playing a game.
You're playing a game, make-believe game where you're like, I cast magic. But you have to think about like, how would this work in real life? If I had the ability to just like cast blasts of air, like what could I do with that?
Yeah.
Like if you were a superhero and that was your one power, like what are you going to do with that? And again, this needs to come from the player. The player needs to propose this to the dungeon master. Dungeon master sort of processes this, thinks of the costs.
It's definitely about rewarding that creativity.
Exactly.
Especially for a player who doesn't often speak out, too. And if they come up with something like this, then shooting them down again is just another nail in the coffin of like, I opened my mouth again.
Yeah, no,
right.
Incredibly discouraging.
Yeah.
If you come up with something creative and the dungeon master is like, well, you know what? Let me look at the rules real quick. Yeah, I don't think you can do that with Gust of Wind. I don't think that's rules as written. I don't think that's how the spell was intended to be used.
But then someone who is constantly trying to abuse every new situation with this spell, very creative, but give them some consequence and more consequence the more they try to abuse, right?
And if you're the dungeon master and you screw up and you're just like, oh, this is broken. They can't use it this way. Just retcon it. You know, like after
tell them the next session that we're not going to be doing that anymore.
Next session, just be like, listen, I don't think I thought about it some more. I don't think that the spell should work like that.
Do not cut it on the fly because that'll really upset your players.
Yeah, give them that moment. Give them that moment for sure. But reel it back in if you went too far with it.
Yes, you used Gust of Wind to lift up a 1,000-pound stone and drop it on the bad guy, and that probably won't happen next time.
All right, another spell that I want to talk about is plant growth, which when you read the description, it doesn't sound all that interesting, but maybe you would allow your players to get away with some shenanigans with it. I don't know. Would you allow, let's say, there is a very tall obstacle, maybe like there's like this outer wall of this fortification you're trying to get into that's very, very tall. Would you allow the druid to go into a market and purchase a small sapling, then use plant growth, plant it, they buy a sapling, they go near the fortification, this tall wall, they plant this sapling, or maybe two of them side by side. They cast plant growth. These things skyrocket up.
Like vines?
They just, like just basically
massive creepy vine guys.
You're making like a makeshift ladder. With plant growth, right?
Okay.
Is that something you would allow someone to do?
So I'm thinking more about the secondary effect of this spell, and I would say yes to because of this. And
so
there's going to be
not the instant version, the 8-hour cast, right?
The 8-hour cast, yes. And it's going to be a yes but for this, because it's a 3rd level and it's a pretty decent spell slot to give.
Sure.
But with the secondary cast, you can cast for 8 hours. You can enrich the land, yield twice as much growth from plants, and it covers a half-mile radius, right? So I would say yes, as the druid. You're going to use this to plant some vine seedlings across a castle wall, but it's going to take 8 hours, and you need to devise a plan of how this is going to work, because in 8 hours you need to focus on this. You're not going to be able to sleep for this. Your friends are going to need to help you. They're going to make sure that the guards watching the wall are distracted. Even when this thing is created, make sure that nobody has noticed. And then once you scale, you might give you guys some checks, because this is just a makeshift made vine wall that has been spawned on the spot.
Yep.
It might be a little weak or rickety. It just grew like last night.
I'm also thinking, now that I'm like thinking of the spell effects of that, is because it's a pretty wide radius of where this takes place, right?
Yeah.
So if you have guys sort of walking along the, the wall, not that wall, but you have lookouts somewhere, they're going to be like, why is that portion of the wall just overgrown?
I don't remember it that green.
And the gardens out on the other side of the wall are beautiful. Like, that's weird. You can always do that too, where there's unintended consequences.
Yeah, think about those other factors.
I always try to do that. I always try to think of stuff where it's like, well, the players thought of something cool, but they didn't actually think this all the way through, right? Which, and again, you're not punishing them. You're just adding complications. You're just literally trying to make the story interesting to them. If they could just enter God mode and cruise through everything you threw at them, why are we even playing?
There's also 3rd spell equivalents for movement, flying around, you know? So using that as a 3rd level spell slot, give that to them, especially if there's those other factors that maybe they didn't think of and they have to get around and make other checks for, and maybe it didn't work, or maybe they did a really great job and should be rewarded for it.
Let's stick to plants. Speak with plants?
Speak with plants.
I think that's what it's called, speak with plants.
Yes.
Would you allow, let's say, because I believe you can sort of like make like the plants do stuff.
Yeah, you can ask them.
You can ask them stuff. Yeah, so like say you were in a combat and you were in a forest and there was trees and this canopy of the jungle or the forest, and there's vines and stuff. If you cast Speak with Plants, are you letting the player maybe choke somebody out with a random vine that's hanging down?
I think...
Or maybe restraining somebody?
I think restraining.
Okay.
I think being careful about, like, the plants doing damage and attacking. Because, like, you can only communicate the very basic of things to them. think about how we communicate with dogs. Or like being very close to
I
that.
mean, you could train a dog to attack.
Yeah,
but you
no,
gotta
that's
train
true.
It, but you got to train
You have
it.
to train it. It's a long time of like
Yeah.
not just like on the spot, Vine, strangle that man, right? But I think by restraint, I think that would be kind of fun. Just being like, you're going to sleep in the woods, and the tree next to you has a lot of hanging vines, and just be like, look, hey buddy, can you just watch our backs while we sleep in the middle of the night, and just grab anybody that comes through the vicinity. You just be like, okay, sounds good, friend.
You're like, all right, I'll see you.
Yeah.
Now, thanks for the help.
Yeah.
Bye. All right, so it seems like you were able to, bend or break the rules a little bit with spellcasting, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts when it comes to cantrips? These don't necessarily have any sort of built-in cost, right? They're free to do. You can just literally be like, pew, 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 I'm firebolting, bitches.
Yeah.
I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
I think with cantrips, I think in the case of Firebolt, it does allow you to set things on fire with Firebolt, right? So I'd be like, time and money,
Yep.
right, are other factors you can set into this. If the players have a buttload of time and they're trying to set a barn on fire, as long as they do things like adding dry hay and stuffing it with things that are flammable, and then you're spending all day like blasting firebolts at it, then why not? If it takes them some time and some funds to make it happen.
Yeah, there's like an actual plan. There's thought behind it.
Yes.
It's not literally like I walk up to this cabin and I flick my finger and cast fireball. Does it burn down?
Yeah, no.
That's where I have a problem.
And
with it.
and kind of my argument against this when casting cantrips, and you do one and they expect the barn to burn down after a while because it caught on fire. You're casting a magical spell, right? And it's magical fire. And, yes, you can create a spot of fire, but, maybe it just dies out because there's wet wood nearby, and it doesn't, especially with the cantrips, you got to make sure that your cantrips are very incidental when players cast them, right? So, I mean, if they wanted to cast Fireball at a building and then expect it to burn down, then maybe.
Oh, it's going to blow up.
Yeah. And they've spent the cost.
That's an explosion. That
Yeah.
makes sense to me. Rather than
You've already started this massive fire.
Yep.
Then yeah, sure. If the barn is dry and flammable, bye. But when people expect that from cantrips, you expect as a player that it's an incidental spell that you can always do. It didn't take a lot for you to do, and as a dungeon master, make sure your players are reminded of this, especially if or even bonfire doesn't say it even catches anything on fire. So when a player does bonfire, it's like, no, you didn't affect that was magical fire, and when you stopped casting the spell, that fire's gone.
Yeah.
Or even if it spread a little bit, you stopped casting the spell, all the fire's out.
Yeah, and I think most of the times when I've come up against this in games, players are usually pretty understanding. If there's a thing that they do and they just really feel like you're just boning them, and they're like this isn't how I feel like it would work. Like, you'll sense that pushback.
Yeah.
But most of the time with cantrips, I feel like people understand that like these are not really powerful spells. These are,
even if you're spending hours and hours doing the same spell, you're like, oh, I did that in 6 seconds.
Yeah.
I can do it again in 6 seconds for free. Yeah.
yeah.
So another example is what you can do with some cantrips is mold earth from Xanathar's Guide. A lot of people kind of throw this spell away and don't really use it.
I've never used it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first part of it that I'm talking about, where you lift up 5 cubic feet of loose earth and you toss it aside. Right,
Up to 5 feet away.
that's it. You're digging a grave.
Yep.
Right, but you're also making a foxhole, and
Sure.
you could hop in yourself, and if your DM liked it, get cover in 360 from everyone else around you, and you can just like start sniping things, right?
That's a cool use for it.
Right, and you get insta cover. I think that's a fun use. Make sure that DMs remember that he has to climb out, and it's an extra 5 feet of movement for him to climb out, so it'll be the first 10 feet of movement that they use.
Yeah.
Well, it's 2 feet for every one when you're climbing, right? So he's going to lose 10 feet of movement climbing out of the foxhole. So that's his like consequence, right? Also, if you're talking about like an extended long period of time of using mold earth, you could like prep. Like if you knew an attack was coming to a fort, you could prep the front with
Home Alone it.
Home Alone it, yeah, or like foxholes and trenches, with this spell, and I would allow that.
Yeah, me too. That's again, you're investing the time. You're like, yeah, it takes you half the day to do it, but you can do it. I just thought of another interesting one where maybe you lift up those 5 cubic feet of dirt, put it up on the ground. Wizard comes by, casts Gust of Wind, and now you've got dirt flying into people's eyes. You can blind people, right?
Combos. So in 5th edition, you can cast a very select number of spells as rituals without needing to expend spell slots, right? So what is your opinion of players casting rituals to like empower a spell over a certain amount of time? How do you feel about that?
Because what's the actual rule is, I believe you have to concentrate on the spell for...
It's like 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Typically.
And you get to cast that spell without expending a spell slot, right? Pretty cool. There's not a lot of spells in the game that have the ritual tag, but I would actually do a lot of crazy stuff with rituals. But again, it's going to have a cost of time, maybe money. Let's say, for instance...
More bodies.
More people get involved. Like, could you do ritual casting with multiple casters? I think yes. So, like, say you needed to put an entire town to sleep, right? Sleep is not a spell that has the ritual tag, right? But let's say that you're up on a hill outside of town and you need to for whatever reason, you guys need to put this whole town to sleep. And I'm going to say, all right, like, you can do this with sleep as a spell, but you're going to need 5 spellcasters. And you're going to need to be casting sleep, each of you, at... between the 5 of you, you need to expend maybe 15 or 20 spell slots. So maybe one guy's casting it at 6th level, or 6th spell slot level. One guy's casting it at 3rd, and one guy's casting it at 5th. Whatever you have to do to reach that 15 or 20.
Okay, so as a total...
So there's that. And then I'm going to make you have to concentrate. Like, this is all you're doing for maybe like 24 hours. Like, you're putting an entire town to sleep. And on top of that, you're going to have to buy some crazy, either buy or go on a small quest to find something that's going to amplify the effects of this spell. So maybe you have to spend a couple thousand gold to find some, this crazy monster dust that's like, it's like this monster salt and dust.
Different materials, right, for casting a spell.
It's a one-time thing that you're gonna make this big ritual summoning circle thing, and you got your 5 guys in there. You're making burgers, and you're putting people to sleep.
That's one of the materials that are required.
So you have the cost of money. You might have to recruit and find other wizards that are willing to help you do this, so that you might have to quest for that. So yeah, there's multiple things that could happen, and on top of that, I would require there to be like concentration, or maybe not concentration. I would require Constitution saves.
Okay.
While you're all casting this for 24 hours, because that's all you're doing. And
it's against the nature of the spell, right?
Correct.
So you might have found an NPC that is like leading this. They might know how to do this, but they're like, it's very complicated because we're not actually casting the spell. We are like just continuing this continuous pull on the weave with sleep, and we're just taking turns, right? We'll play it like that.
And I would definitely have there be consequences. Like you're playing with magic in a way that it wasn't meant to be played with a sleep spell. There's a chance that you accidentally put somebody to sleep forever.
Comas.
Like you just put them into a peaceful Sleeping Beauty type thing. And if you really do bad, like you just like that whole town's ruined. Like everyone goes there and everyone's just in like a catatonic state, like just napping on the ground, cat napping. I would 100% allow this stuff in my games if the player is clever enough to come up with it. And I would even maybe like before the campaign starts explain like that this is allowed. You know?
Yeah.
Because I don't think a lot of people would think to do this. Definitely ritual casting, like make it crazy, make it like bring in that sort of chaoticness, that little like make magic more powerful, but at the expense of like there could be some serious consequences if we screw up this cast.
With the same creativity that your player comes at you with what they want to do, meet them or double the creativity that you're going to allow them to do this with, you know, and think about all the factors that might be in play with what they want to do. So that's it. You don't suck at casting spells anymore.
Yay!
They're different colors. They look different. They look cool. You're using them in different ways. Pretty awesome.
You're doing all sorts of fun and interesting things with this. And I want to put a little note here that we didn't talk about earlier. What we spoke about in this video is not someone rules lawyering being a wizard. This is not a person that's just like,
Well, if you actually happen to look at the way that the spell is written, technically it sounds like I can do this.
DMG, page 153.
that's not what we're talking about. I'm not talking about taking the language as the spell is written and trying to tweak it into a way that is fortuitous or beneficial for you because of the way that it was written. We're talking about creative ways of making spells less sucky
and rewarding your creative players.
Yes.
How continue to reward them without punching holes in their sails and destroying their dreams. If you destroy all their dreams, they're never going to cast it.
Ooh, so deep. Oh man. But that's it. Yes, let's have fun with spells. Let's make 5th edition feel a little bit more magical, maybe a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more creative. Have fun with it. Go nuts.
If we helped you at all, don't forget to like this video and subscribe below so we can give you guys more content. Hit the Toll the Dead bell and so we can get notifications for us.
So give us some comments. Give us down below. Tell us what your favorite spell combos are. What are some of the most creative uses of spells? And again, caveat, we're not talking about like casting illusions here. You know, that's something I want to stress. We're not talking about casting minor image or major image or any of that stuff. Those are spells that require the dungeon master to lean in on the creativity and sort of make those spells work.
We're talking about those spells that are hard-coded in here and doesn't say DM's discretion specifically within the spell, but we all know the DM always has freedom with what happens in their game.
Yes. And that's the last caveat. That's the last thing. We're Basic Liches, and we are out of here. I am Wolf, and I'll catch you next time.
I'm Camo. Later, Liches.
Bye!